For most of the season, the idea felt inevitable, almost automatic. The Boston Celtics would reach the trade deadline, look at their roster, look at the Eastern Conference arms race, and decide they needed another center. After all, this was supposed to be the obvious flaw. Kristaps Porzingis was gone. Al Horford was gone. The front court looked thin on paper, and for months, fans and analysts alike circled the same conclusion. Boston would have to make a move. But now, with the deadline approaching and the games piling up, a surprising question has emerged inside the Celtics ecosystem. What if the front court is not actually broken? What if the answer has already been on the roster the entire time? And what if making the obvious trade is actually the wrong move? That question exists because of one name that was barely mentioned in preseason conversations: Neemias Queta. For a long stretch, Queta felt like a placeholder, a temporary solution, a depth piece keeping the seat warm until the real center arrived. But basketball seasons have a way of revealing truths that preseason logic cannot predict. And as the Celtics continue to exceed expectations in a year that was supposed to be transitional, Queta has quietly turned himself into one of the most important swing factors in Boston's decision-making. Coming into the 2025-26 season, the Celtics knew the 5 spot would be under a microscope. Losing Porzingis and Horford in the same offseason was not just about losing talent. It was about losing experience, spacing, rim protection, and playoff credibility. The assumption was simple: Boston would compete early, stay afloat, and then use its assets to stabilize the position at the deadline. That assumption has driven months of speculation. Names have been floated, trade machines have been fired up, first-round picks have been discussed like they were already gone. But assumptions only hold power until reality challenges them. Over the last several weeks, Neemias Queta has done exactly that. This is not about Queta suddenly becoming an all-star or transforming into a dominant force every night. That is not the argument. The argument is far more subtle and far more important. Queta has become good enough that the gap between him and the centers available on the market may not justify the cost it would take to acquire them. And that changes everything. When you watch Queta now compared to earlier in the season, the growth is obvious. His positioning has improved. His timing as a rim protector has sharpened. His understanding of angles on both ends of the floor looks more natural. He is not guessing anymore. He is reacting. And in the NBA, that distinction matters. Offensively, Queta is not asked to do much. And that is exactly why he works. He sets solid screens. He rolls hard. He finishes plays at the rim. He keeps the ball moving. There is no wasted motion and no desire to step outside of his role. That kind of clarity is rare, especially on a team where stars and scorers dominate the spotlight. Defensively, the effort has never been a question. But now the discipline is catching up to the motor. Queta is contesting without fouling. He is staying vertical. He is anchoring lineups that do not collapse the moment opponents attack the paint. On many nights, he looks less like a stopgap and more like a legitimate starting caliber center. And that reality forces Boston to pause, because the trade market does not exist in a vacuum. Centers who can actually change playoff games do not come cheap. If the Celtics want a clear upgrade, not a marginal one, the price likely starts with a first-round pick, possibly more. And in a season where Boston is already outperforming expectations, that raises a dangerous question. Are you improving your chances this year enough to justify narrowing your future options? Celtics are not desperate, that matters. Desperation leads teams to overpay. And right now, Boston does not feel desperate in the way people expected them to be. They are winning games, are competitive against elite teams. They are finding answers internally. And perhaps most importantly, they are doing it without mortgaging tomorrow. That does not mean the front court is perfect. It is not. Queta will have off nights. He will struggle against certain matchups. There will be moments in a playoff series where the lack of elite size or spacing becomes obvious. But the question is not whether Queta is flawless. The question is whether a marginally better center truly swings those moments enough to justify giving up premium assets. That answer is far less clear than it was 2 months ago. There is also the Luka Garza factor. Garza is not the answer by himself. The combination of Queta and Garza has given Boston something functional. Not spectacular. Functional. And in the context of this roster, that may be enough. especially when the Celtics' identity this season has been execution and collective buy-in rather than overwhelming talent. This is where roster construction meets philosophy. Brad Stevens and the front office have spent years building flexibility. Draft picks are not just currency, they are insulation. They allow you to pivot when windows open unexpectedly, and this season has opened a window that few predicted. But that does not mean you throw caution away. Sometimes the smartest move is resisting the temptation to act simply because action feels expected. It represents that tension perfectly. On paper, upgrading from him seems logical. In practice, replacing his minutes with someone only slightly better may not move the needle enough to matter. Especially when you consider chemistry, continuity, and the reality that Queta is still improving. This is not a finished product. That is the key. Queta is still developing. He is still learning the nuances of the NBA game. And yet he is already providing value that exceeds his cost. That matters in a league governed by cap math and asset management. A center who gives you starting level effort, acceptable production, and internal growth without costing future picks is not easy to replace. The trade deadline is often framed as a moment of aggression, but it can also be a moment of discipline. The Celtics should absolutely do their homework. They should explore every option. They should know the price of every available big man. But knowing the price does not mean paying it. There is a difference between improving and forcing improvement. Right now, Boston feels like a team playing with house money. No one expected this version of the Celtics to be this competitive. That does not mean they should gamble recklessly. Sometimes the best move is recognizing when the risk outweighs the reward. If there is a center available for minimal cost, a deal that does not touch core assets, then sure. Add depth. Add insurance. But if the upgrade requires meaningful future value, the calculus changes. Because Queta has proven one thing beyond doubt. He is not a liability. And in many games, he is an asset. That is not something the Celtics can ignore. There will be playoff moments that test this roster. There will be possessions where size matters. There will be nights when Queta struggles. That is part of the reality. But there will also be moments when his energy, discipline, and role clarity stabilize lineups in ways that do not show up in box scores. And those moments matter too. Celtics entered this season with uncertainty at center. They approach the deadline with a choice. They can chase the obvious move, or they can trust the growth happening in front of them and protect their future flexibility. Neemias Queta has made that choice harder, and that alone is a win for Boston. As the deadline approaches, the conversation should not be about what the Celtics lack. It should be about what they have already built. Because sometimes, the most dangerous teams are not the ones that make the biggest moves. They are the ones that recognize when they do not need to. If you want to keep following how this roster evolves, how the trade deadline unfolds, and whether the Celtics choose patience over impulse, make sure you stay connected. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. The decisions made in the next few days could shape not just this season, but the future of Boston basketball.